Picture this. You're live on national television, millions watching. You've just asked Al Roker to think of any celebrity in the world, any single person out of billions. You've planted a prediction in an envelope hours before the show. This is your moment. The cameras are rolling. And then Al Roker says the wrong name, not even close to what you'd predicted. What would you do? Panic? Freeze? Make excuses? This actually happened. And what happened next changed everything about how we understand influence, persuasion, and success. Because instead of falling apart, this mentalist stayed absolutely calm, asked one simple reframing question, and turned that disaster into the most talked about moment of the show. They invited him back for an unprecedented extra segment, all because he knew something most people never learn. Here's what's wild. He never actually read Al Roker's mind. That's not what mentalism is. Mentalism isn't about supernatural powers or magic tricks. It's about reading people, understanding how humans think, what they fear, what they crave, and how to position yourself so that success becomes almost inevitable. Think about the last time you walked out of a meeting wishing you'd said something different, or when you forgot someone's name 5 seconds after hearing it, or when fear of rejection stopped you from asking for what you wanted. These aren't personality flaws. They're just untrained mental habits. What you're about to discover is how to train your mind the same way elite performers do. Not magic, not tricks, just proven habits that work in boardrooms, job interviews, first dates, salary negotiations, and every moment where human connection matters. This is about reading yourself before you read anyone else, about mastering the mental blocks that silently sabotage you every single day. If you've ever felt like opportunities slipped through your fingers because you weren't prepared, or you couldn't think fast enough, or you let your inner critic win, everything is about to change, because the difference between people who win rooms and people who fade into the background isn't talent, it's habits, tiny, repeatable mental habits that compound into extraordinary results. Channel your inner mentalist. Let's start with what actually happened on that Today show. The prediction was sealed, Taylor Swift. Al Roker was supposed to say Taylor Swift, but when the moment came, he said George Clooney. Complete miss. Disaster, right? Wrong. Instead of panicking, the mentalist held his composure, body completely still, voice steady, eyes locked. And here's the genius move. He asked a reframing question. George Clooney, interesting. Al, let me ask you this. Any women come to mind? Just like that, he created a new pathway. Al paused, thought again, and said Taylor Swift. Perfect. The mentalist then pulled out a shirt he'd been wearing under his jacket the entire time, a shirt that read, T Swift for Prez. The audience went absolutely crazy. Here's what most people miss. This wasn't luck. This was engineered. Before that show even started, he'd gamed out every possible scenario. What if Al says an athlete? What if he says a politician? What if he says someone totally random? For each scenario, he had a backup plan, a reframe, a way to guide the conversation back to his predicted outcome. He'd rehearsed the recovery more than the actual trick. This is the first massive lesson. Greatness isn't about never making mistakes. It's about planning for mistakes so well that they become invisible. When you prepare for failure as meticulously as you prepare for success, you become virtually unshakable. Think about theory of mind for a second. It's the psychological concept of stepping into another person's head and anticipating their thoughts, fears, desires. Before that show, the mentalist had already lived through Al Roker's experience in his imagination. He knew Al might feel pressured. He knew the crowd would create energy. He knew Al would want to be interesting on camera. So when George Clooney came out instead of Taylor Swift, he didn't see disaster. He saw opportunity, because he'd already been there mentally. Most of us do the opposite. We script the perfect outcome, then crumble when reality doesn't cooperate. We prepare our opening lines, but not our recovery lines. We visualize success, but never failure. And that's why when things go sideways, we freeze. Here's what changes everything. Start gaming out the things that could go wrong. Before your next big presentation, list 3 things that could derail you. A tough question, technical failure, someone challenging your data. Then script your response to each one. Actually write it down. When you've already mentally survived the worst-case scenario, your nervous system stays calm when it actually happens. And here's the secret sauce. Your audience can smell tension. The moment you tense up, they tense up. The moment you seem lost, they check out. But when you stay calm through, believe it to achieve it. Now let's talk about what happened inside Neil Armstrong's chest during the Apollo 11 landing. As the lunar module descended toward the moon's surface, alarms started blaring. The computer was overloaded. They were running out of fuel. Armstrong had seconds to make decisions that would determine whether he lived or died, whether the mission succeeded or became a catastrophic failure broadcast to the entire world. His heart rate? 150 beats per minute. That's not calm. That's not some superhuman lack of fear. That's real stress, real pressure. But here's what's extraordinary. Despite that racing heart, Armstrong's hands were steady. His voice was clear. His decisions were precise. He'd visualized this exact scenario hundreds of times. Not just the successful landing, the failures, the alarms, the fuel warnings, the computer malfunctions. He'd mentally crash-landed that module in his mind so many times that when it actually started happening, his training took over. This is what real visualization looks like. It's not sitting around imagining yourself on a beach holding a trophy. That's fantasy. Real visualization is mental rehearsal under duress. It's imagining the pressure, the fear, the things going wrong, and then scripting how you'll respond. Michael Phelps and his coach Bob Bowman used to do something brilliant. They'd create mental videotapes of races, but they wouldn't just visualize perfect swims. They'd visualize his goggles filling with water mid-race. They'd visualize a bad start, a stronger competitor pulling ahead. And then they visualize Phelps executing his response, staying calm, adjusting his stroke, finding his rhythm. When those exact scenarios happened in real competitions, Phelps didn't panic. He'd already been there. His mind recognized the situation and activated the pre-programmed response. Most people think confidence is a feeling. It's not. Confidence is a skill built through repetition, especially repetition of recovering from failure. When you've survived something in your mind 50 times, the 51st time in reality doesn't shake you. Here's the practical move. For your next high-stakes situation, don't just visualize it going well. Spend equal time visualizing it going wrong. Write down 5 things that could fail. Your biggest competitor shows up, the client pushes back hard, your demo doesn't work, your mind goes blank. Then, for each one, write exactly what you'll do. Not vague, I'll handle it nonsense. Specific actions, specific words you'll say. When you do this, your nervous system starts to relax because it knows you have a plan even in chaos. The research backs this up. When you visualize both success and failure with equal detail, your brain builds more robust neural pathways. You're not just training for one outcome, you're training for adaptability. And adaptability is what separates people who thrive under pressure from people who collapse. But here's what you can't skip. You have to believe the recovery is possible. Not in some magical thinking way, in a practical, evidence-based way. You believe it because you've seen yourself do it in your mind. You've scripted it. You've practiced it. That's not wishful thinking. That's preparation. And this compounds over time. Every time you successfully navigate a scenario you pre-visualized, your brain logs that as evidence. Next time the stakes are higher, you're not hoping you can handle it. You know you can because you've done it before. Even if it was just in your imagination first, the neural pathways are the same. Your brain doesn't fully distinguish between vividly imagined experience and real experience when it comes to building skill patterns. This is why elite athletes spend almost as much time on mental rehearsal as physical practice. It's why the best public speakers visualize hecklers and tough questions before they take the stage. It's why successful negotiators script responses to every objection before the meeting even starts. They're not being pessimistic, they're being prepared. And preparation is what gives you the calm that everyone else mistakes for natural talent. Make your fear of rejection magically disappear. Let's get real about something that stops more dreams than anything else. Rejection. Not the rejection itself, the anticipation. That moment before you hit send on the email, before you ask the question, before you put yourself out there. Your heart pounds, your stomach twists, every cell in your body screams, "Don't do it, stay safe." Here's why that happens. Your brain processes social rejection in the same regions that process physical pain, literally. When someone rejects you, dismisses you, excludes you, the anterior cingulate cortex lights up. That's the same area that activates when you stub your toe or burn your hand. Social pain is real pain to your nervous system. No wonder we avoid it. But here's the problem. Everything worth having requires risking rejection. The job you want, the relationship you crave, the business idea you know could work, the promotion you deserve. None of those come without putting yourself in a position where someone could say no. So if you let fear of rejection control you, you've capped your entire life at the level of what feels safe. There's a technique that changes this completely. It's called creating psychological distance. Think of it like this. When you're about to do something scary, you're fusing your identity with the task. You're thinking, if I fail at this, I'm a failure. That's terrifying. But what if you could separate yourself from the performance? Here's how it works. Create an alter ego. Not in a delusional way, in a strategic way. Give your performer self a name, a character, even a specific outfit or ritual. When you step into that role, you're not risking your core self anymore. You're letting that character take the stage. If that character gets rejected, it stings, sure, but it doesn't destroy you, because that's not really you, it's the role you played. This isn't avoidance, it's protection that allows you to take more risks. Think about Beyoncé's Sasha Fierce or Kobe Bryant's Black Mamba. These aren't just marketing gimmicks. They're psychological tools that let these performers do things that would terrify their everyday selves. They step into the persona, take the risks, absorb the pressure, then step back out. You can do this too. Before your next big moment, put on your performance uniform. Could be a specific jacket, a watch, a color. Create a small ritual that signals to your brain, we're switching modes now. When you're in that mode, you're not everyday you. You're the version of you that doesn't flinch at rejection. And here's what's wild. The more you do this, the more those qualities bleed back into your regular self. The confidence stops being an act and starts being who you actually are. But there's another layer. Exposure therapy. You can't eliminate fear of rejection by avoiding it. You eliminate it by surviving it, repeatedly, in gradually increasing doses. Start with rejections that don't matter. Ask for a discount at a coffee shop. Request an upgrade on a flight. Propose an idea in a meeting where the stakes are low. Here's what happens. Your brain starts collecting evidence that rejection isn't fatal. Each no you survive becomes proof that you can handle it. The fear starts to lose its grip because your nervous system realizes it's been lying to you about the danger. Rejection isn't a tiger. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it won't destroy you. And then reframe the entire concept. No doesn't mean never. It means not yet, not here, not with this approach. But the door isn't permanently closed unless you close it yourself by giving up. Some of the biggest success stories start with brutal rejection. The job interview that went nowhere but led to a better connection. The pitch that failed but taught you what actually resonates.
the relationship that ended but cleared space for the right person. When you start treating rejection as data instead of verdict, everything changes. You stop taking it personally and start analyzing it strategically. Why did they say no? What can I learn? How can I adjust? That's not failure. That's refinement. Every no brings you closer to the yes that actually matters. And here's the most important reframe. Sometimes rejection is protection. That job you didn't get? Maybe it was a toxic environment. That investor who passed? Maybe their terms would have crushed you. That person who didn't text back? Maybe they would have wasted years of your life. When you look back at rejections from a distance, you often realize they were redirections towards something better. So the move isn't to eliminate fear of rejection, it's to make friends with it, to build your tolerance through exposure, to create psychological distance through persona, and to reframe it from threat to information. When you do all three, rejection stops being this monster in the shadows and becomes just another part of the game. And when you're not afraid of the game, you start playing to win instead of playing not to lose. That shift changes everything. Focus on others. Here's a pattern you've probably noticed. The most magnetic people in any room aren't the loudest or the flashiest. They're the ones who make you feel like the most interesting person they've ever met. While everyone else is waiting for their turn to talk, these people are genuinely curious about you. They ask better questions, they remember details, they make you feel seen. That's not accident, that's strategy. There's this concept called the pedestal effect. When someone is impressive, powerful, or famous, we automatically put them on a pedestal in our minds. We treat them differently. We get nervous. We try too hard. And ironically, that creates distance. They can feel it, and it makes the interaction transactional instead of human. The most successful influencers do the opposite. They immediately kick away the pedestal. They find ways to make the interaction feel equal, casual, real. They share a vulnerability. They ask for your opinion on something. They make a self-deprecating joke. Suddenly, you're not talking to someone above you. You're talking to someone beside you.
Here's where it gets powerful. When you make someone else feel important, feel heard, feel valued, they associate those positive emotions with you. It's not manipulation, it's basic human psychology. We like people who make us feel good about ourselves. And when you genuinely focus on others, when you're truly curious about their stories, their challenges, their wins, something magical happens. They start trusting you. They start rooting for you. They start wanting to help you succeed. This shows up everywhere. In NFL locker rooms where mentalists perform, the ones who succeed aren't the ones showing off how clever they are. They're the ones who involve the players, make them the heroes of the moment, create experiences that make them feel amazing. The trick becomes secondary. The feeling is what lasts. Now let's talk about the most underrated superpower in human connection, remembering names. Most people are terrible at this, and they blame their memory. But that's not the problem. The problem is attention. You're not forgetting names, you're never learning them in the first place. Here's what actually happens. Someone introduces themselves, and while they're saying their name, you're thinking about what you're going to say next. Or you're distracted by the environment. Or you're nervous about making a good impression. The name never gets encoded in your memory because you never actually focused on it. The fix is absurdly simple, but incredibly powerful. It's called listen, repeat, reply. When someone tells you their name, actually listen. Make it the only thing in your awareness for that 2 seconds. Then immediately repeat it. Nice to meet you, Jennifer. Say it 3 times in the first 30 seconds. So, Jennifer, how do you know the host? Then reply with something substantive that connects the name to the person. Jennifer mentioned she's a designer. But here's the upgrade. Create a visual hook. When you meet Jennifer, imagine something vivid and slightly absurd that connects to her name. Maybe she's standing in front of a Jennifer tree. Maybe her smile sparkles like a jewel, since Jennifer means white wave or fair one. The sillier and more visual, the better. Your brain And here's the finishing move. Leave them wanting more. Don't overstay. Don't dump your entire life story in the first conversation. Create intrigue. End on a high note. Great performers always leave the stage while the audience is still engaged, never after they've lost interest. Apply that to your interactions. Be the person who leaves conversations better than you found them, but who doesn't drain them dry. When you master this, you're not networking, you're building genuine relationships. And relationships are the hidden infrastructure of every success story. The job you get because someone thought of you. The opportunity that lands in your inbox because you helped someone 2 years ago. The introduction that changes your trajectory. None of that happens because of your resume. It happens because you invested in people when there was no immediate payoff. And that investment compounds forever. Forget tomorrow, start today. There's a psychological trap that destroys more potential than almost anything else, the someday trap. Someday I'll start that business. Someday I'll write that book. Someday I'll have that difficult conversation. Someday I'll get in shape. And someday never comes because it's not a real date on the calendar. It's a comfortable lie we tell ourselves to avoid the discomfort of starting. Here's what shifts everything. The 2-week rule. Whatever you want to accomplish, what can you ship in 14 days? Not complete perfectly, not make flawless, just ship. Get it out there. Make it real. 2 weeks is short enough that you can't procrastinate it away, but long enough to create something meaningful. This works because of how our brains handle time horizons. Goals that are months or years away feel abstract. They live in fantasy land where everything goes perfectly and motivation never wavers. But 14 days is concrete. You can visualize it. You can count the days. It creates urgency without overwhelming you. Here's the strategy. Pick your goal, then ruthlessly scope it down to something you can finish in 2 weeks. Want to start a podcast?
Don't plan a whole season. Record and publish one episode in 14 days. Want to launch a side business? Don't build the perfect website. Get one customer in 2 weeks. Want to get healthier? Don't plan the perfect 6-month transformation. String together 14 good days. The magic is in the momentum. When you finish something, anything, your brain gets a dopamine hit. That's not motivation advice. That's neurochemistry. And that dopamine creates momentum. One win makes the next win easier. One shipped project makes the next. You've learned something. You've gathered information about what works and what doesn't. That makes your next sprint smarter. This mindset kills the fear of failure because there is no failure. There's only iteration. And here's what happens over time. Those 2-week sprints stack. 12 sprints is half a year. 26 sprints is a full year. When you consistently ship something every 2 weeks, by the end of the year, you've created an entire body of work. Meanwhile, people who are still perfecting their plan haven't started. The gap between you and them becomes astronomical, not because you're more talented, but because you gave yourself permission to start messy and improve through repetition. So the question isn't, what do you want to accomplish someday? The question is, what can you ship in the next 14 days? Answer that. Put it on your calendar. Block the time. Remove the obstacles and start. Not tomorrow, not Monday, today, right now. Take the first action within 5 minutes of reading this. That's how you break the someday trap. That's how you become the person who actually does the things other people only talk about doing. Stack the deck in your favor. Let's go back to that Today Show moment, but look at it from a different angle. When the prediction went sideways and Al Roker said George Clooney instead of Taylor Swift, what saved that moment wasn't just composure, it was preparation. Ridiculous, obsessive, multi-layered preparation. Before that show ever went live, the Mentalist had engineered multiple backup plans. He'd thought through dozens of scenarios. What if they say a male celebrity? What if they say an athlete? What if they say someone completely random? For each possibility, he had planted subtle tools, pre-positioned props, and rehearsed reframes that could steer the moment back to success. That T Swift for President shirt? That wasn't just for the Taylor Swift prediction. It was one of several backup props he'd carefully positioned. When George Clooney came out, he immediately recognized it as a male celebrity category, triggered his reframe about any women, and when Taylor Swift emerged, he already had the reveal ready. It looked spontaneous. It was meticulously engineered. This is what stacking the deck actually means. It's not cheating. It's not leaving things to chance when you don't have to. It's engineering the environment, the circumstances, and the probabilities so heavily in your favor that success becomes far more likely than failure. Think about James Bond. In every movie, Bond survives impossible situations, but if you watch carefully, he's constantly setting up advantages, planting tools earlier, building relationships that pay off later, creating fallback options. the moment comes, it looks like he's pulling off miracles, but really, he stacked the deck 3 scenes ago. You can do this in your life. Before a big presentation, don't just prepare your slides. Show up early and control the room. Test the tech, check the lighting, arrange the chairs. Talk to people as they arrive so you have friendly faces in the audience. That's stacking the deck. When you start presenting, you're not walking into uncertainty. You've eliminated half the variables that could go wrong. Before a difficult conversation, don't just wing it. Game out the likely objections. Prepare your responses. Choose the time and place strategically. Maybe it's a walk instead of sitting across a table. Maybe it's after a meal when everyone's more relaxed. Maybe it's in a neutral location instead of someone's office. These details matter. They shift the probabilities. There's also the concept of if-then defaults. These are pre-committed decisions for predictable situations. If the meeting runs long, then I'll tactfully suggest we schedule a follow-up to respect everyone's time. If someone challenges my data, then I'll acknowledge their concern and offer to walk through the methodology. If I start feeling nervous, then I'll slow my breathing and focus on the other person instead of myself. When you set these defaults in advance, you don't have to think in the moment. You've already decided. That saves mental energy and prevents panic-driven bad decisions. It's like having autopilot for the predictable parts, so you can focus your attention on the unpredictable parts. And here's a crucial piece. Remove friction from the behaviors you want and add friction to the behaviors you don't. If you want to work out consistently, lay out your workout clothes the night before. Put your shoes by the door. Remove every excuse and barrier. If you want to stop checking social media first thing in the morning, charge your phone in another room. Add steps between you and the behavior you're trying to avoid. This is environmental design. Your willpower is limited. It depletes throughout the day, so don't rely on it. Instead, design your environment so that the right choices are easy and the wrong choices are hard. That's stacking the deck at the identity level. You're making it easier to be the person you want to be. There's also strategic redundancy. Never have just one plan. Always have Plan B and Plan C ready to deploy. Always have a backup prop, a backup story, a backup route to the goal. This doesn't make you paranoid. It makes you anti-fragile. The belief becomes self-fulfilling. Breaking this loop requires doing the thing anyway, gathering real evidence of what you're actually capable of, and updating the story you tell yourself.
There's also this phenomenon where people react to stress by catastrophizing. One thing goes wrong and suddenly everything is falling apart. You make one mistake in a presentation and your brain tells you your entire career is over. That's not reality. That's your threat detection system misfiring. The fix is to force specificity. What exactly went wrong? What's the actual worst case? What's the realistic case? What can I control right now? When you get specific, catastrophes shrink. Usually the worst case is uncomfortable but survivable. The realistic case is much better than the worst case, and there are always things you can control, even in chaos. Forcing your brain to zoom in on specifics instead of swimming in vague dread is like turning on the lights in a dark room. The monsters disappear. And here's a powerful technique, the single next action rule. When you're spiraling, ruminating, stuck in negative loops, don't try to solve the whole problem. Don't try to fix your entire mindset. Just identify one small action you can take in the next 10 minutes. Send one email, make one call, write one paragraph, clean one corner of your desk. The action interrupts the rumination. It gives your brain something concrete to focus on, and it generates tiny momentum that can break the negative spiral. Another layer. Most people are terrible at handling mistakes. They either deny them, defend them, or let them destroy their confidence. None of those help. The mature move is to acknowledge it, extract the lesson, and move forward. Yes, I missed that. Here's what I learned. Here's what I'll do differently next time. That's it. No drama, no shame spiral, just data. This is about treating yourself like you treat someone you're coaching. When a friend makes a mistake, you don't destroy them. You help them learn from it. You remind them of their strengths. You encourage them to try again. Why would you treat yourself with less kindness than you'd treat a friend? The voice in your head should be a coach, not a bully. And here's the thing about self-sabotage. It often disguises itself as self-protection. You don't apply for the job because you're being realistic about your chances. You don't start the project because you're waiting until you're really ready. You don't have the conversation because it's not the right time. These sound reasonable, but they're often just fear wearing a disguise. The way to tell the difference? Ask yourself, if I weren't afraid, what would I do? If the answer is different from what you're actually doing, fear is driving. And fear is a terrible navigator. It keeps you circling the same safe territory forever, wondering why your life doesn't change. So the commitment is this. Catch your negative self-talk. Question it. Force it to defend itself with evidence. Break catastrophic thinking by forcing specificity. Use the single next action rule to interrupt rumination. Treat mistakes as data, not disasters. Talk to yourself like a coach, not a critic. And distinguish between genuine wisdom and fear wearing a reasonable mask. When you do this consistently, something shifts. You stop being your own worst enemy and start being your own best ally. And that might be the most important relationship you'll ever build, because you're with yourself every single moment. Make that a partnership that helps you grow instead of one that keeps you stuck. Ask for help. Here's something that seems obvious, but almost nobody does well. Asking for help. Most people either never ask because they think it makes them look weak, or they ask in vague, useless ways that make it impossible for anyone to actually help them.
Both approaches leave opportunities on the table. Let's start with the vulnerability piece. There's this myth that successful people are self-made, that they figured everything out alone, that asking for help is admission of incompetence. That's complete nonsense. Every successful person you admire has a network of people who helped them, advised them, opened doors for them, and taught them things they couldn't have learned alone. The difference is they learned how to ask in ways that made people want to help. Here's the secret. People actually love helping when the request is clear, when it's something they're good at, and when they believe their help will matter. What people hate is vague, let me know if you can help requests that put all the work of figuring out what you need back on them. Bad ask. Hey, I'm looking for career advice. Let me know if you want to grab coffee sometime. That's lazy. It's too broad. It doesn't value their time, and it doesn't give them any reason to say yes. Good ask. I'm transitioning into product management, and I know you've successfully made that move. Could I ask you 3 specific questions over a 20-minute call next week? I'll send the questions in advance so you can prepare. I'm specifically trying to figure out how to position my current skills for PM roles. That's specific, it's time-bound, it shows you've done your homework, and it makes it easy for them to help. Here's another critical piece. Help people before you need help. Build relationships when there's no immediate transaction. Offer value first. Share articles they might find useful. Make introductions. Celebrate their wins. Become someone who gives more than they take. When you do that, asking for help later doesn't feel extractive. It feels like the natural flow of a real relationship. And here's what most people miss. Asking for help is actually a compliment. You're telling someone, I value your expertise, I respect your journey, I believe you have something I need to learn. When framed that way, most people are honored to help. It makes them feel valued. So you're not imposing, you're giving them an opportunity to share what they know. But there's a darker side to this that needs addressing. Choosing the wrong rooms. Not every environment deserves your energy. Some rooms will never appreciate what you bring. Some audiences will never get your work. Some relationships are draining instead of energizing. And if you stay in those rooms too long, you'll start believing their assessment of you instead of seeking out people who actually see your value. The move is to audit your environments ruthlessly. Which rooms make you better? Which relationships are reciprocal? Which communities celebrate your growth? Double down on those and have the courage to leave the rooms that don't serve you, even if it's uncomfortable, even if those people have been around for a while. This is also about building a team, not trying to be a solo hero. The lone genius myth is toxic. Nobody builds anything significant alone. Steve Jobs had Wozniak, Gates had Allen, Oprah had Gail. Every impressive achievement is actually a team achievement, even if only one name gets the spotlight. So start thinking in terms of assembling your team. Who's great at the things you're weak at? Who energizes you when you're stuck? Who tells you the truth even when it's hard to hear? Who believes in you when you're doubting yourself? Those are your people. Invest in those relationships like your life depends on it, because it kinda does. And here's the mentor piece. You need mentors at different stages. You need people one step ahead who remember what your current challenge feels like. You need people 10 steps ahead who can show you the long view. You need peers who are in the trenches with you,
And you need people you're mentoring because teaching is how you solidify your own learning. Make mentorship formal. Don't wait for serendipity. Reach out to someone you admire with a specific ask. Would you be willing to meet for 30 minutes once a quarter to help me think through my career development? I'll come prepared with specific questions and I'll keep you updated on my progress. Most successful people will say yes to that because it's structured, it's time-bound, and it shows initiative. And when someone helps you, close the loop. Tell them what happened. Tell them how their advice impacted your decision. Tell them the outcome. People help you because they want to see you succeed. When you keep them updated, you're not being annoying. You're giving them the reward of knowing their help mattered. And that makes them want to help you again. So the commitment is this: ask for help clearly and specifically. Build relationships before you need them. Give more than you take. Choose your rooms wisely and leave the ones that drain you. Build a team instead of being a hero. Formalize mentorship and close the loop. When you do all this, asking for help stops being a weakness and starts being a superpower because you're not alone anymore. You're supported. And supported people can take bigger swings than solo operators ever could. Turn your weaknesses into your strengths. Here's something most people never realize. Your biggest liability can become your greatest asset with the right framing and the right audience. The thing you're most insecure about? That might be the exact thing that makes you irreplaceable in the right context. Think about it. Being introverted in a room full of salespeople feels like a weakness, but being introverted in deep research work is a strength. Having a non-traditional background feels like a disadvantage when everyone else has the right credentials, but it's an advantage when the problem requires fresh thinking that traditional training wouldn't produce. The key is positioning. You don't change the trait, you change the context. You find the rooms where your weakness is actually valuable, where your different perspective is exactly what's needed, where the thing that makes you weird makes you indispensable. Here's a real pattern. People with unconventional paths often have cross-disciplinary skills that specialists don't have. They can connect dots across fields. They can translate between different worlds. They can see patterns that people who stayed in one lane miss. That's not a bug, that's a feature. But you have to frame it that way. The story you tell matters. Don't apologize for your background. Own it. I didn't take the traditional route, which means I bring perspectives from 3 different industries that most people in this field never see. That's helped me solve problems that stump people with more traditional training. That's not arrogance. That's strategic self-presentation. You're helping people see the value that your background creates instead of letting them default to seeing it as a deficit. But here's where this gets really powerful. Vulnerability, when shared strategically, creates connection. When you share a struggle you've overcome, a mistake you made and learned from, a weakness you've worked to improve, you become human. You become relatable. You become trustworthy. Because perfection is intimidating. It creates distance. But authentic struggle followed by growth, that's inspiring. That's magnetic. There's a caveat. Strategic vulnerability is not trauma dumping. It's not oversharing. It's not making people uncomfortable with your unprocessed pain. It's sharing a story arc where you faced something difficult, learned something valuable, and came out better. The key is you're not still in the crisis. You're on the other side
offering the lesson. This is also about exposure. The things you're weak at, you get stronger by doing them scared, by taking small risks in low-stakes environments, by gradually expanding your comfort zone. Nobody wakes up fearless. They just wake up willing to be afraid and do it anyway. And each time you survive something that scared you, you gather evidence that you're more capable than your fear told you. Here's a practical move. Take your biggest perceived weakness and reframe it as a strength in a 60-second story. Practice telling that story until it feels natural. Then use it in your bio, your interviews, your conversations. I used to think being dyslexic was a disadvantage until I realized it made me a visual thinker who can see solutions other people miss. Boom! You just turned a weakness into a differentiator. And this requires choosing your arenas carefully. Don't fight battles in environments designed for your weakness. An introvert trying to compete in loud, chaotic networking events is playing on hard mode. But an introvert having deep one-on-one conversations? That's their natural habitat. Play to your strengths. Choose games you can win. There's also this. Sometimes your weakness is just a skill you haven't developed yet. And that's fine. You don't have to be great at everything. You just need to be great at the things that matter most for your goals and good enough at everything else. Focus your development energy where it creates the most leverage.
And build your team around your gaps. You don't need to fix every weakness. You need to partner with people whose strengths complement yours. If you're big picture but terrible at details, find a detail person. If you're creative but struggle with execution, find an executor. The best teams aren't made of people who are all good at the same things. They're made of people whose different strengths combine into something greater. So the move is, stop trying to sand down your edges to fit into environments that were never built for you. Instead, find or create environments where your edges are exactly what's needed. Reframe your story so your non-traditional path is an asset, not an apology. Share strategic vulnerability that creates connection. Expose yourself to low-stakes versions of scary things to build capability. Choose arenas where you have natural advantages, and build teams that cover your gaps instead of trying to be perfect at everything. When you do this, you stop wasting energy trying to be someone you're not. You start investing energy into becoming the most powerful version of who you actually are. And that version is always more valuable than a mediocre copy of someone else. Let's talk about something that seems like magic, but is actually just training. Remembering names and details like you have a photographic memory. Most people think this is a talent you're born with. It's not. It's a skill you build. And when you build it, it changes everything about how people perceive you and how effective you become. Here's the truth bomb. You don't have a bad memory. You have untrained attention. The problem isn't recall. It's encoding. Information never makes it into your memory in the first place because you weren't really paying attention when you encountered it. Think about what happens when someone introduces themselves. They say their name, you say, "Nice to meet you," while simultaneously thinking about what you should say next, or how you look, or whether you have something in your teeth. The name passes through your consciousness like water through a sieve. 3 seconds later, it's gone, and you blame your memory. but your memory never had a chance. The fix is deceptively simple. Listen, repeat, reply. When someone says their name, make that the only task. Clear everything else out. Just hear the name. Then immediately repeat it out loud. Nice to meet you, Marcus. Use it in your very next sentence. So, Marcus, how do you know the host? Then form a reply that connects the name to something substantive about them. Marcus mentioned he works in AI. You've now heard the name, said it out loud, and connected it to information about the person. That's triple encoding. The name went from ephemeral sound to something your brain filed as important, and you did it in 15 seconds. But here's the upgrade. Add vivid imagery. Human brains remember pictures way better than abstract information. So when you meet Marcus, create a weird, memorable mental image. Maybe he's standing with his arm around a literal statue of Marcus Aurelius. Maybe he's wearing a laurel wreath like a Roman emperor. The more absurd, the better. Unusual imagery sticks. And then there's the memory palace technique. This is ancient. Greek and Roman orators used this to memorize hours-long speeches without notes. It works because your brain is exceptionally good at remembering spatial locations and visual scenes. Here's how you use it. Before you go to an event where you'll meet multiple people, mentally walk through a familiar place, your house, your office, a route you walk every day. As you meet people, place them in specific locations with their visual hooks. Jennifer, the designer, in your living room, sitting on the couch. Marcus, the AI guy, in your kitchen, making coffee. Rachel, the investor, in your bedroom, looking at your bookshelf. When you need to recall everyone you met, mentally walk through that space. Your brain will automatically serve up the images you place there, and with them, the names and details. It sounds weird. It works ridiculously well.
But memory isn't just about names. It's about information retention. And the key there is also not what you think. It's not about reading things more carefully. It's about spacing and retrieval practice. Your brain doesn't store information when you read it. It stores information when you force yourself to retrieve it. So the pattern is, learn something, then test yourself on it before you've forgotten it. Then test again after a longer interval. Then again. Each time you successfully retrieve information, you strengthen the neural pathway. You're literally building the memory through the act of remembering. There's also chunking. Your working memory can only hold about 7 items at once, but if you group information into meaningful chunks, you can remember way more. Phone numbers are already chunked. 555-123-4567 is easier than 555-123-4567. Do this with everything. Group related items. Create categories. Find patterns. And here's a party trick that teaches the principle. Learn the alphabet backward. Sounds hard. It's not. You just break it into chunks. ZYX, WVU, TSR, QPO, NML, KJI, HGF, EDC. Say those chunks 10 times, then remove the pauses. You just memorized something impossible in 5 minutes. That's the power of chunking. Now let's talk about why this matters beyond party tricks. When you remember people's names and details about their lives, you communicate something profound. You matter to me. In a world where everyone is distracted, where people check their phones mid-conversation, where nobody really listens, being the person who remembers is magnetic. People remember how you made them feel, and when you remember them,
When you follow up on something they mentioned last time, when you ask about their daughter's soccer game or their mother's health, you make them feel valued. That creates loyalty that transcends professional relationships. This is also about note-taking. Don't trust your memory for everything. After important conversations, meetings, or events, spend 90 seconds jotting down key points, names, and action items. This serves two purposes. It forces you to encode the information more deeply, and it creates an external backup. But make your notes actionable. Don't just write, "Talk to Sarah about partnership." Write, "Sarah interested in partnership, wants specific proposal by end of month, prefers email communication, focus on ROI metrics." That's a note you can actually use. And here's the timing hack. Review your notes during mentally empty time. Your commute, while brushing teeth, waiting in line. Those moments are usually wasted. Turn them into spaced repetition sessions. Pull up your notes and quiz yourself. Who did you meet this week? What were the key takeaways from that meeting? What did you commit to? This consistent, distributed practice is how information moves from short-term to long-term memory. You're not spending extra time, you're using existing time more effectively. So here's the system. Train attention through listen, repeat, reply. Add vivid, absurd imagery to make information memorable. Use memory palaces for multiple items. Practice retrieval, not just review. Chunk information into meaningful groups. Take actionable notes. Review during mentally empty moments. When you do all this, people will think you have some kind of superpower. You'll know the truth. You just trained a skill that most people never practice, and that skill compounds. The more you use these techniques, the easier they become. The better your memory gets, the more confident you feel. The more confident you feel, the more risks you take, and round and round. Memory isn't just about remembering. It's about the confidence and relationships and opportunities that come from being the person who makes everyone else feel remembered. Here's something that sounds soft, but is actually one of the hardest skills to master: charm. Not the slimy, manipulative kind, the genuine, disarming kind that makes people want to be around you, trust you, and help you succeed. Charm is often misunderstood as being smooth or charismatic. That's not it. Charm is about making other people feel good about themselves when they're around you. It's other-focused, not self-focused. It's about warmth, generosity, and creating positive emotional experiences. Here's the test. Would someone want to have a drink with you after the show, after the meeting, after the project? If your skills are impressive, but you're exhausting to be around, people will avoid you. If you're pleasant to be around, they'll find ways to work with you even if you're not the most skilled person in the room. This matters more than people think. Skills are abundant. There are thousands of people who can do what you do, but there are far fewer people who can do what you do and be delightful to work with. That combination is rare. That combination gets opportunities.
So how do you cultivate this? First, by reducing threat.
When you first interact with someone, especially in high-stakes situations, their nervous system is scanning for danger. Are you judging them? Are you a threat to their status? Are you going to make them look bad? The move is to immediately signal safety. Smile genuinely. Make a light, self-deprecating comment that shows you don't take yourself too seriously. Acknowledge any awkwardness or tension in the room with gentle humor. Well, this is way more intense than I expected. Anyone else need a moment? That breaks the ice. That tells everyone's nervous system they can relax. Then shift all your focus to the other person. Not in a fake transactional way, in a genuinely curious way. What's their story? What are they working on? What lights them up? Most people never get asked these questions with genuine interest. When they do, they light up, and they associate that good feeling with you. Here's a crucial element. Calibrate your energy. Read the room. If it's high energy, match that. If it's subdued, don't blast in like a hurricane. If someone is stressed, don't be aggressively cheerful. Meet people where they are, then gently guide them toward a better emotional state. And use people's names correctly and generously. It's such a simple thing, but it's rare. That's a great point, Jennifer. Marcus, I'd love to hear your take on this. Rachel mentioned something earlier that connects to this. Using names correctly shows respect. It shows you are paying attention. It makes people feel seen. There's also the power of killing with kindness, especially with difficult people. When someone is being a jerk, your instinct is to fight back or withdraw. Neither works. Fighting escalates. Withdrawing gives them power. The third option is to respond with unexpected warmth. Someone makes a cutting comment? Respond with genuine curiosity. That's an interesting perspective. Tell me more about why you see it that way. Someone tries to dominate? Give them space, then calmly redirect when they're done. I appreciate that input, and I want to make sure we also hear from, you're not being weak, you're being unshakable, and that's disarming. Here's what happens. They came in expecting conflict. You gave them calm. Their nervous system doesn't know what to do with that. They often soften because you refuse to play the game they expected. This is also about being appropriate for the moment.